A year ago today, 17-year-old Axel Rudakubana walked into a Taylor Swift-themed dance class in this area of Southport, just off Hart Street, where I'm standing now. In a 12-minute knife rampage, he killed 3 girls: Alice de Silva Aguiar, 9, Bebe King, 6, and Elsie Stancombe, 7, as well as injuring countless others. In January, he was sentenced to 52 years in prison. We've returned today for what is a solemn occasion, the first anniversary. No tributes have been left here on the request of the family. We can only tell really that it happened here by looking at these 3 pink bows that have been tied to a local lamppost. There's even a notice on a wall here on Hart Street by the council saying, please do not lay tributes. This is clearly not a scene that the families of these 3 young victims want to remember. They don't want to commemorate here. And a little later, we will be going to the town hall where a 3-minute silence will be held. We have returned briefly to the small industrial park where this atrocity took place. On the gates there's a very simple tribute. There's a floral wreath hanging on the gates, and one of the businesses has declared, our hearts are with you. We're not opening today out of respect for what happened here 12 months ago. What struck me about being here is just the ordinary residential nature of this street. I mean, as a mum, this is precisely the kind of place where you would bring your daughters or your sons in the summer holidays to have some fun. We're surrounded by terraced and semi-detached houses. It's extremely quiet. People are just going about their daily lives. If we think back to the day that this happened, it was a blistering hot summer's day. And really, within minutes of this atrocity unfolding, the scene behind me became something that the locals here couldn't believe they were witnessing. We're going to be hearing from a reporter that was on the scene in the immediate aftermath of what happened, a man who was reporting for the Liverpool Echo, who will tell us what it was like that day. But we're just here just to remember what happened and also to move into the centre of Southport a little later to see how this town is coming to terms with what happened, coming to terms with their grief and trying to remember the 3 young girls that were killed here.
So let me just read out this Merseyside police statement in full for you. They said, we can confirm that emergency services are in Southport following a major incident this morning, Monday the 29th of July. They say at around 11:50 they were called to a property on Hart Street to reports of a stabbing. There are a number of reported casualties and more details will be confirmed when possible. They said armed police have detained a male and seized a knife, and he has been taken to a police station.
A 3rd child has died in the stabbing attack in the British seaside town of Southport. The girls were 6, 7 and 9 years old. 5 other children in a critical condition in hospital, as well as 2 adults. The children were attending a holiday dance class, a specially themed workshop that celebrated Taylor Swift when they were stabbed.
I'm looking at the front page of the Daily Telegraph, and it's got these pictures of these beautiful girls. I mean, it makes me well up. I'm struggling to talk about this story. I was in tears about it last night, listening to an eyewitness talk through what he observed.
It's a middle-aged woman, and she's got, I presume, one of her child in the passenger seat, and then in the back there's like 4 or 5 more kids, all in the back, covered in blood. I open the door, and honestly, like, there's this girl, which will probably stay with me for the rest of my life, and she was completely out of it. I can't explain to you how horrific it is what I saw.
Got these beautiful kids: Bebe King, 6, Elsie Stancombe, 7, Alice Aguiar, 9. A community in mourning.
How many more children have died on our streets, Prime Minister? How many more children?
Time to change, Stormer.
Come on, needed. How many more children? Is it mine next? Bye-bye. Got your photos, off you go. Make a real change, Prime Minister. Make a real change! Get our children! Go away!
A number of officers injured as they dealt with what was described as serious disorder.
Was this guy being monitored by the security services? Some reports say he was, others less sure.
It is extremely important that people don't spread damaging misinformation online.
I just wonder whether the truth is being withheld from us. I don't know.
Masked up thugs, as some have called them, clashing with police, throwing bins, burning bins and other bits of rubble and missiles, anything they get their hands off to try and attack this mosque and the police.
Men will rise up, we're always going to rise up. You've brought this war on our shores.
Axel Rudakubana is 17, British, born in Wales and of Rwandan heritage.
The community of Southport had to suffer twice. A gang of thugs got on trains and buses, went to a community that is not their own, a community grieving the most horrific tragedy, and then proceeded to throw bricks at police officers who just 24 hours earlier had been having to deal with an attack on children in their community.
As we just heard there, we had a town in mourning, and then, if things couldn't get any worse, they then had to face unrest on their own streets. We caught up with 3 local residents, 3 local women, to tell us their memories of that period. So we were just walking along this road in Southport and we bumped into a lovely lady called Sylvia. Sylvia, lovely to meet you. And we were just about to speak to the local Imam and we saw you there and you said the best place to come to reflect on what happened a year ago is here. Now, Gaynor, you were very emotional earlier.
Yes.
You're local to this area.
Yes.
What are you feeling today?
Those 3 kids should be here today because they're only kids and the way things gone on, I think it's terrible for what's happened to those beautiful little kids. This place has given me a lot of love. I met a lot of people because I get anxiety really bad, and it's helped me a lot. But those 3 kids, it's so heartbreaking.
And you're from very close to where it happened.
I'm not far from here.
What do you remember about that day, Gaynor?
Like, it's hard to say really. It's happened down Arch Street. I didn't know there was a dancing school down there. And those 3 kids were just dancing. I can't remember what song it was. But it shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have happened at all.
Anne, how do you think the community in Southport has reacted to what's happened?
Well, it's very sad to hear about all this. It was when it happened, I didn't know till my daughter said she wanted me to go and help her with the children because her partner, his 2 nieces got stabbed. But lucky enough, they're all right, but they still have the flashbacks.
So, sorry, your daughter's partner's nieces were involved?
Yeah, they got stabbed, but they're all right now at the moment, you know, but they still, because she had to go to Alder and she wanted me, and I was going singing. I shouldn't have done that, but I still feel sorry for all these little girls, and I don't know. It's just so sad what's happened, and I couldn't believe it, you know. I still think they should be here today, but what can you do?
And so your daughter said, can you come and help? What, in the aftermath, to try and calm...
Well, she was just going to Alder to see his nieces, like, you know, but she had to go every day and stop with them there.
Of course. And how did it feel for something so horrific to happen so close to you?
I don't know, it was so sad because she's very good, you know. She's got 3 children of her own and she goes to Alder with the middle one. She's got cerebral palsy, like, so it must have been hard for her. It was really, really, really sad for everyone that day.
And Sylvia, the other feature of this was the unrest that happened afterwards in Southport.
Absolutely, absolutely, because, you know, the people around here were so aware of the helicopters, they were so aware of the noise, they're so aware of the horses, you know, going down the streets. And so still even now, I've got friends who've actually left Southport today to be away from the memory of last year.
What do you remember of it, Sylvia?
Well, I live a little bit further away, but the day afterwards were the riots. I mean, you're very much aware of it on the television anyway at the time, but the next day was the riots that were happening, and that was scary. But it was also scary because you realise that it was so unnecessary. And of course, then people were talking about how the trains, there was a lot more people on the trains of the evening of the second day coming into Southport purposely, to cause a fuss, to cause, what did they want to cause? I don't know what they wanted to cause, but it was just so hard to have to watch what was going on. But we were seeing it on the television ourselves because we were too far away. But to see the ambulances burning. But then I came down, on that second day before the riots, I came down to see the flowers. I mean, the flowers, they were just astonishing. Just astonishing. And people were coming from the south of England with flowers to Southport. That emotion that was generated throughout the UK of this event, and it is because they were so small, but it was so necessary, the violence that took place afterwards.
How do you think Southport's coped with this, Gaynor? Because an event like this happens and it taints a town, and the town doesn't deserve to be tainted by this.
I think Southport is going to take a long, long time to get back to normal. It shouldn't have happened at all. And I have seen the flowers and the teddy bears and the beautiful pictures on the Atkinson Centre in town. Shouldn't have happened at all.
But do you feel the community has come together?
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that, because we want to be uplifting today. It can't all be about the atrocity. Something must have been gained from this if the community here has come together.
Yes. We just help each other out, really, in the community. Yeah.
Any final thoughts, ladies? Sylvia?
I haven't got any final thoughts except that keeping their memory, I don't think anybody will forget that lives here. But as with everything, memories fade, but the love of those children that they generated during this last year will always continue for many, many years to come. It's inevitable.
The days after the attack proved a second tragedy. Police would only say that the assailant had been born in Cardiff. There was then a great deal of disinformation spread online, suggesting that, in fact, the killer had been an illegal immigrant, that he had been a Muslim, all of which proved later to be untrue. We then saw riots on the streets of Southport, and a local mosque was attacked. We caught up with the local Imam to find out how he coped with the aftermath of the tragedy. It's a difficult day today, isn't it, Mr. Hussein? What are your thoughts on this first anniversary of the atrocity that happened just down the road?
Well, our thoughts are obviously with the family, who didn't want a lot of fuss, but we praying for them, and we are, keeping our thoughts with them this day.
And what do you remember from that day?
What, last year?
Yeah.
It was a dreadful day, of course. It was a day where we heard that there is an awful incident took place. And then later on we discovered that there is few kids have lost their lives. So when we were hoping to support the family and be there for them, we faced a lot of what's happened.
Yes.
The story.
Well, how difficult did it then become? Because we then had a tragedy hijacked by people wanting to make it a multicultural issue, rumours of Rudakubana being a Muslim, being an immigrant. Yeah. In fact, he was born to Rwandan parents, brought up in Cardiff, and the parents were practising Christians. How difficult was it for the Muslim community of this area at that point when disinformation's flying around and you've got riots on the streets?
Well, you said it. It's disinformation, and it's also false, and a lot of viciousness as well of how they put the very quickly move from inventing a name to the guy and then inventing a religion to the guy. And then he comes to this mosque. And then the next thing was we have pushed him to do whatever he did. So obviously you can see all this is in the mix. But however, these people are bent on creating trouble and spreading hurt in the community, which they managed to do, because a lot of people were upset. A lot of people were obviously affected by what they have done. There is a time and a place for everything. So they could have at least delayed it.
Yes.
Until we discover what is the true information is.
We subsequently discovered that Rudakubana had been referred to the Prevent programme. He had downloaded Al-Qaeda training manuals. There was a suggestion of a leaning into a degree of Islamic extremism. What was your response when you heard that?
Well, let's say he is a Muslim. Let's say he did what he did because he's twisted. Why should that reflect on the rest of the community, which were peaceful people? Everybody here, and that showed on the following day, where everybody came to support us and to be, standing next to us. It shows that we are not trouble as they trying to make up.
Yes.
So even if the guy was what they said he was, there was absolutely no reason to take that on the whole community and also terrorize the whole neighborhood in here and hijack the memory and the time where should have been spent thinking and helping the families throughout their trouble.
We've just been speaking, in fact, the reason we're speaking to you is we saw a lady called Sylvia here who is a member of the High Christian Church. Mm-hmm. She's got good relations with you, good interfaith relations. She told us something that you did in the aftermath of the atrocity, and that's that you stood on the corner of the street and you handed out flowers.
Right, okay.
Can you tell me a bit about that and why you did that?
That was later on. We don't know how to thank the community for their support, for their help, for the messages, for the kind words, for their love. They were here in droves, and they're saying to us, you've always been here, you're always part of this community. There is absolutely we don't blame you for anything.
And we know you've got prayers in 3 minutes. What kind of prayers will you be saying in this community for the girls that were killed?
Well, obviously they are in our thoughts. The girls, needlessly, they lost their lives. And needlessly, people hijack the memory and the good time we should have spending with the family. So we just thinking about them, and we're telling them that we are with you. If they need any help, any support, anything from us, we are here for them. And they know that, by the way.
Imam Hussein, I know you've got prayers to conduct now. We'll let you go. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much indeed.
Coming up next, we speak to Ben Haslam, a reporter on the Liverpool Echo, but also a local man who knows this area well. His father works just around the corner from here in Hart Street, and he shares with us what it was like covering that atrocity. Ben, you were on the scene from the very beginning, not just in your capacity as a reporter, but also because your father runs a business round the corner, you live round the corner, so you were extremely familiar with this whole area. When did you first find out what was happening?
So we'd just actually gone out on our lunch break and my phone just started blowing up. I was getting messages, phone calls from friends, sources, my dad, saying, I've never seen so many police in Southport before. I've never seen so many police going down the main roads in Southport. And then after repeated phone calls with my dad, I proceeded to ring Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service because they were actually first on the scene as the emergency services. And then spoke to Merseyside Police as well, who gave me a broad idea of the severity of it. My dad actually spoke to a father of a child who was in the room that day. He walked around just to see what was actually going on, because at this point it wasn't entirely clear. And then as I basically broke out into a run back to the office, I was about 10 minutes away, burst in, spoke to police again. It was more a case of yes or no questions. So have children been starved? Yes. Has there been an arrest? Yes. Is it ongoing? Yes. And then myself and my colleague, Patrick Edrich, our crime reporter, we quickly drove down to Southport, so it's about a 45-minute drive. So at this point, it was probably about 12:15. I was kind of notified of what was going on within 10 minutes of it happening, 5 minutes of it happening. And then we arrived at the scene, and it was just bedlam.
So just remind us when the attack happened. So you were on the scene. How soon after it happened?
I'd probably say, so it happened shortly before midday on July 29th. It was about 1:20, I'd say. So we're talking an hour and 20 minutes. It might have been earlier, it might have been slightly later, but considering the actual journey, it almost felt a bit surreal being there. That soon after it happens, the cordon was tiny. You could see, sheets on the floor. It was bizarre being that close to such a serious incident, and it was only after we arrived, kind of 10 minutes later, that they actually extended the cordon, and then it got extended again. But first arriving, it was almost like you were at the entrance of this business park.
And you say that you saw sheets on the floor. Are you talking about bodies being covered by sheets? Is that what you saw?
No, I don't think it was necessarily bodies. I think it was more the people had taken sheets and towels out. I think there was, at that point, there were still parents there. I don't think it was a case of a body being in the streets at that point.
And how soon did it become obvious, or how soon were you aware that there had been deaths?
It's difficult to say looking back on it now. You get a feeling when someone who covers breaking incidents a lot for the Liverpool Echo and have done for the last kind of 4 years. You get a gut feeling when you go to scenes like this, and just being there and seeing, we arrived and there was just police cars, ambulances, fire engines abandoned in the road. There was people crying. There was, I saw paramedics and firefighters crying as they walked past their vehicles. You could see the severity of this. It was truly horrific. And I vividly remember later that evening, people were aware that there were fatalities, and then the next day finding out that a third child had died. It was a lot.
I mean, Ben, Gordon and I have covered these sorts of stories. It's completely unimaginable even now to think of the scene that was unfolding there. For, as you say, you've got your father there speaking to a parent outside, and how horrifying that must have been. You're there also having to do a job, and we've both been in that situation. You're trying to find out what's happened, and it's on your patch as well, which I imagine was pretty difficult. Just describe that area, because the geography of all this and the idea of these young girls just being in a summer holiday camp, I mean, it must have been a completely alien environment to what you were used to, knowing that area so well.
So yeah, I've lived in Southport, almost the entirety of my life. So I'm 25 now. I've probably spent 3 years at university and then a few months in London. For the rest of my life, I've lived in Southport, and no one I knew, I didn't know the Heart Space was there. None of my friends knew the Heart Space was there. This is a tightly packed residential area, just full of semi-detached 3-bed houses with a tiny little business park with, 4 businesses down there. It's just so indescript almost. It's a lovely area. It's full of families. Since this happened, I've spoken to many of the families that live down there who have children themselves, and you would just never, I know it's very almost cliche to say, but you just never expect anything remotely close to what happening in that area. It was a space where young children would go to spend their free time, or parents would take their children who weren't quite old enough for school, for classes. This was a Taylor Swift themed workshop. It was, something so meant to be filled with joy, so much joy and innocence, and it was just, it was completely bizarre that he even knew that this place existed.
Ben, at what point did you start to become aware that grief was turning to unrest?
I think that the following day, when UK Storm was coming, I'd heard grumbles that there was going to be some form of protest in the town. We quickly found out there was going to be a vigil, and that the vigil was meant to bring people together, which it did. But when Sir Keir Starmer arrived on Hart Street, it was tense. It was really, really tense. There was people there recording. There was people there crying. It was a very emotionally charged situation. And then when he laid the wreath and people started shouting, that was when it was like a switch had flicked. It felt like there was unrest there. And then as the day went on, I was quickly becoming more aware of, how big this alleged protest was going to be. The vigil was moving, it was touching, and it was everything that I think the town wanted at that time. But then as myself and one of my colleagues made our way back to close to Hart Street, which is, for context here, the unrest, the disorder, the riots is, a 3-minute walk from the scene. So we were at the scene, and then we could see a lot of people dressed in black walking to where this riot unfolded on the corner of St. Luke's Road and Sussex Road, and that, you could see that it had been kind of boiling up throughout the day.
Was there the perception at that point, Ben, that the Prime Minister had mishandled his visit to Southport that day?
I think some people saw it like that, but I think largely it was noted that he had come and he had wanted to be there. It's difficult to say what other people were feeling, just because there was so many people there. There were so many journalists when he arrived. There was a lot of people there recording for, to post on YouTube and TikTok and social media. And then you also just had the people who wanted to be there to pay their respects and lay flowers. It was a handful of people who shouted when he was there. It wasn't, we're not talking 50 people all shouting at the Prime Minister. It was a handful of people, and as footage that appeared online afterwards showed, there was one, one woman who was really upset, who said that their daughter was friends with one of the 3 children killed, and that, people were upset. It was a situation where there was so much emotion in the town that it was going to bubble over in one way or another, and it just happened to be when Keir Starmer was there.
You were obviously on the spot reporting. You were very busy. You were having to talk to people and get witness testimony, etc. Were you conscious of the anger that was building, and more importantly, were you conscious of what was causing it?
Witness testimony in the sense of following the attack or around the disorder?
If you were very aware of the reason that people were starting to get angry and were starting to, that unrest was building.
The unrest was, in that moment, and it transpired that it was in the moment. It was, the unrest was building on the basis of disinformation that was spread where there was a lack of information. So, as you know, especially when an under 18 is arrested, but when anyone is arrested, their name is not publicised. People at that time didn't understand that, and then you had the false name that was circulated, false information stating he was a Muslim, false information stating that he was a migrant. All this fueled the anger and the disorder that unfolded in the town at the time. When I was speaking to people, people who lived in the community, people who lived nearby, they were just upset. They were sad. They were grieving. I was upset. It felt like the entire town, my hometown, was grieving, and as that disorder unfolded, it felt like he'd been hijacked. You know, this grief and this sense of sadness felt like it'd been hijacked by these people who took the opportunity to cause disorder and target police and target, you know, the authorities. It was, you know, you've got to remember as well, Elsie's mum, Jenny, took to Facebook to condemn these riots, to condemn the disorder and condemn the anger, because, as she said, it's not what they needed, it's not what they wanted. And, you know, I think when she said that, she definitely was speaking for all the families that were involved with this attack.
Because you were on the local paper, Ben, I assume that you did build up a rapport with the 3 families that were affected. We know they have subsequently spoken out. Can you give us an insight into what effect this has had on Southport?
I think it's very difficult to put into words just the effects that it's had on other people in Southport. People are very anxious about the anniversary. People are 1 year on. People are very anxious about, you know, the 29th of July, just because there is so much emotion. People, you know, they're concerned about the image of Southport as well. You know, this is a seaside town that, if you're from the north of England, or certainly the northwest of England, you've more than likely been on a staycation in Southport. It's just a coastal, family-orientated town that, you know, has now been tarnished with this, you know, unthinkable tragedy. People want to remember Bebe, Elsie and Alice for who they were. You know, photos, videos, they've all showed just how bubbly and you know, character-filled these 3 young girls were. And then not to mention the people who were not just injured in the attack, but also the children that were just there, that, you know, their lives have been completely turned upside down. They've been scarred. I was speaking to one parent the other day whose, you know, daughter survived the attack but was injured, and said that just the hot weather is now a trigger. You know, that take it back to 29th of July last year. It was a balmy, hot summer's day. You know, there wasn't a cloud in the sky. It was, you know, touching 30 degrees, and that is now a trigger. You know, what should be a great time, 6 weeks off school, hot weather, is now completely ruined. You know, there is echoes and ripples across the town now off the back of this horrific attack.
Is there nervousness that there might be more unrest because of the 1 year anniversary, and what are the police doing to make sure that doesn't happen?
There is slight nervousness around potential unrest. I spoke to the Imam, Ibrahim Hussein, from Southport Mosque the other day, and he said that, you know, they are constantly receiving, you know, intel of potential incidents. You know, some more serious than others, but, you know, I think people are also quite nervous and about the media coming back. You know, people being asked about it in the street, people having to talk about it again, because it is, you know, grief. It's a harrowing thing that people have gone through. In terms of potential unrest, I think the Merseyside police are very much had their finger on the pulse, maybe more so than they did 12 months ago, when it comes to the potential of riots and violent disorder. You know, there was one neighbour who I spoke to kind of last week who, you know, that they come from Asian descent, and they felt uncomfortable just leaving the house. You know, this is a family of 3 sons, one of which is a 20-year-old student who didn't even want to leave the house for days after this happened, weeks after this happened. You know, there is that nervousness from especially the Muslim community, but I think there is also that awareness that Merseyside police are certainly trying the best. There is a police presence in the town. You know, it was only at the weekend I was driving past the mosque, and there was also a mobile police station driving past at the same time.
Was the local community generally welcoming of the news that Rudakubana got 52 years?
Yeah, I think once people understood why he wasn't handed a life order, you know, had this happened a week later, he would have been eligible for a life order. You know, I don't think nothing is going to you know, fix what he did. Nothing is going to change what he did. And I think the anger is there that this happened, but given the circumstances, the fact he was 17 when when this attack took place, 17 when he was arrested, 17 when he was charged, I think it's and the judge himself said that the likelihood of him being released from prison is very low. There is that sense of he will probably never be released from prison, but nothing brings back the lives of Bebe, Elsie and Alice.
Ben, you'll obviously be aware, as our audience is, of a lady called Lucy Connolly, who was sentenced to 31 months in prison for inciting racial hatred after she called for mass deportations and the burning of migrant hotels in a tweet that she deleted on the day of the Southport killings. She's become a bit of a cause celeb for free speech campaigners. What's the attitude towards her in Southport?
If I'm being honest, I don't think I've ever had a conversation with anyone from Southport about Lucy Connolly. People may have their opinions about it, people may have certain feelings about it, whether she should be incarcerated or not. But, it's not a story I've, particularly covered, and it's not really been anything that, in the grand scheme of things, people in the town are the fundraising for the charities in the names of these three children, that talking about, the 3-minute silence that's going to take place on the anniversary. They're talking about the local impact. They're not, unfortunately, talking about day to day a woman who put out a tweet and was subsequently arrested and convicted.
And on that, to finish, Ben, is that where the focus now lies? So Elsie, Bebe and Alice's family, are they ploughing their efforts into their charity work? Do they want to continue to speak about their daughters? Is it now a case of they said everything they want to say and they just want to try and get on with the rest of their lives?
Yeah, I think, at the moment it's heartwarming to see the entire town and now raising money for each. There's 3 different charities set up now, all in the names of the 3 children. Elsie's mum and dad were kind of the first ones to really make moves with the charity. Elsie's Story, now you have Bebe's Hive, and now you have Alice's Wonderland. That is where everyone's efforts seem to be, and the families have very much dedicated their lives to raising money to put it back into the community, put it back into giving children, maybe children who can't afford it or children who are ill, these chances to have these opportunities to go abroad or to have these once in a lifetime trips. I know Bebe's Hive is working really hard to make counselling available for children who have been subject to bereavement and things like that. It's where everyone's mind is at in Southport, and that's what people are looking forward to, rather than looking back at what's happened.
Ben Haslam, thank you very, very much indeed for joining us today from, I think, your office at the Liverpool Echo. Thank you.
Thank you both.
So it's just 2:45. We've got 15 minutes to go until the 3-minute silence, and lots of people have gathered here. Yes, the families said that they didn't want tributes laid at Hart Street, but clearly the locals here want to mark this occasion, want to pay their respects. So I'm surrounded now by local residents, young and old. There are some children behind me. Of course, this occurred on their summer holidays last year. And I think what struck us about being in Southport today is just how many people have been affected by this. We spoke earlier to a local councillor who said that he had to provide support to the local community in the immediate aftermath. When we were at Compassion Acts, they made the point that they'd had to help a lot of first responders and a lot of ordinary members of the public that were just caught up in this, that witnessed things that they should never have had to have witnessed. We, of course, also remember the other children that were in that dance class that saw things that no child should ever have to see. We were just convened here by taxi, by an Uber driver who said that the whole of the taxi community, of course, felt incredibly sorry for the taxi driver that brought Rudakubana to the dance class, had no idea whatsoever what he was planning. So at every step of the way, as we have been in Southport today, we've spoken to members of the community who have all felt this very, very personally.